Brexit threat. Labour warns it could vote with Tory rebels to derail the bill. Tackling gazumping, new plans to make buying and selling a home faster and less stressful. Cutting congestion. Will the new £10 a day charge on vehicles cut toxic air pollution in the capital? All the President's Men, a rare gathering of the 5 surviving former US leaders. Racing and testing for plastic. Sky Ocean Rescue teams up with a crew competing in a round-the-world sailing challenge. And 21st century Sundays, how the 7th day of the week has changed. A very good afternoon to you. The Shadow Brexit Secretary says Labour will side with Tory rebels in crucial votes on the Brexit bill unless Theresa May agrees to a binding Commons vote on the final deal or no deal at all. And Sky News has learnt that 5 major business groups have teamed up to warn the government of the risk of jobs posed by Brexit. We'll have more on that in a few moments' time. But first of all, let's take a look at the 6 red lines Sir Keir Starmer has published this morning. Well, they include ensuring the 2-year transition period, as requested by the Prime Minister in her Florence speech, is added to the text of the Brexit bill. He wants a guarantee that workers and consumer rights, as well as environmental standards, are not watered down after Brexit, so the UK doesn't fall far behind Europe. And he's calling for a concession to Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, who want relevant powers repatriated directly to them, rather than first being taken over by Westminster. Well, our reporter Sarah Haji-Bagheri joins us now. And Sarah, what impact is this likely to have on the Brexit bill?
Well, it's certainly going to be challenging for the government. Ever since that snap election was called and Theresa May lost her majority,
is a deal which means the British economy suffers. That's not something we're going to accept.
And Sarah, there has been a warning this morning too from the business community about the impact of Brexit.
Indeed. We've just got in the past few minutes from our city editor, Mark Kleiman, a letter, strongly worded letter from 5 key business organisations, including the CBI and the British Chamber of Commerce. I can read you a bit of the letter. It says that they are calling for an agreement that is needed as soon as possible, as companies are preparing to make serious decisions at the start of 2018 as to what exactly they want to get out of Brexit. OK,
Sarah, thank you. Gazumping could be banned as part of government plans to make buying and selling a home cheaper, faster and less stressful. Ways of locking in deals and stopping sellers accepting higher offers will be considered in a consultation with mortgage lenders, solicitors and estate agents. Sky's Mike McCarthy has more.
They eventually found their dream home, but not before a particularly unpleasant negotiating process. Buying or selling a home cheaper, faster and less stressful. Mike McCarthy, Sky News.
Now, lots of our viewers have been getting in touch with their experiences. I'm going to read you a few of those. Brian, first of all, in Rotherham, he says, my seller pulled out a couple of days before completion, costing me £2,000 plus. I completed the sale of ours, so now we're living in a small caravan. We've got no furniture after she agreed to sell us all of hers. The system is disgusting. Now this from Dean Davies. He said, I purchased a house in 1991, subject to final contracts being drawn up. After I secured positions at the local school for my children, the seller informed me that he had increased the price by £10,000. He had no other purchasers for the property other than my surveyor, who decided he could get a better price for the owner. And now finally we've got Simon Robinson. He had this experience. He said, after agreeing a price with a buyer and telling them that their bid was successful, the estate agent actually came back to me 2 weeks later and told me another buyer had put in a higher bid. And I said to the agent, I don't believe we're having this conversation. I've accepted the previous bid and told the buyer that the house is theirs. I'm not going to gazump them. The agent was totally dishonest, and we've had a lot of reaction in this morning with a similar theme. Now, we've got a bit of breaking news to bring you now. We're just hearing the exit polls projecting a victory for the Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's ruling coalition in the lower house election. That news just breaking now, that those exit polls suggest victory for Shinzo Abe. Now, from tomorrow, owners of older cars will pay an extra £10 T-charge to drive into London. The Mayor Sadiq Khan announced the toxicity charge in February as part of a package of measures to tackle air pollution. Around 9,000 early deaths in London are thought to be caused by long-term exposure to air pollution every single year. Sky's Phil Edwards is here with more details on this, and this is going to affect a lot of people, 10,000.
10,000 people every day driving into the congestion zone area of London in older vehicles though, Rebecca. We're talking about vehicles that were registered before January the 1st, 2006. So if you've got a 55 plate vehicle or older, you're going to get clobbered, whether it's petrol or diesel. It's not quite as simple as that, but what you can do to make absolutely sure is go on to Transport for London's webpage, enter your registration number in the box provided, and in seconds it will tell you whether or not you face this extra charge. It's going to affect all sorts of vehicles, minibuses, coaches, HGVs, but not taxis. Some people will say, well, they're some of the most polluting vehicles. Any taxi that's registered with Transport for London, they're exempt, whether it's mini cabs or the traditional black cabs as well. But yeah, it is serious because it's 9,000 premature deaths every year. And Sadiq Khan obviously wants to address this. You pay the charge in the way that you normally pay the congestion charge now. And this affects motorcycles, let me say. I mean, I've got a couple of motorbikes myself. My older one is going to be affected. I'm going to get a £10 T charge if I drive that into central London. At the moment, we bikers don't pay the congestion charge at all, but we will have to pay on our older vehicles this £10 charge.
So how old are the vehicles?
Roughly speaking, 2006, January the 1st, anything older than first registered on January the 1st, 2006, you will get hit. But as I say, some vehicles, some Mercedes and some German vehicles were actually complying with Euro 4 before then. So type in your registration, you might get away with it. But watch out if you don't pay the fine. And some people are saying this has been brought in without much fanfare, and people aren't really aware of this. If you don't pay the charge, you could get fined £130.
Indeed, you wouldn't want to get that, would you? Thanks, Phil. Now, Catalan's president says the Spanish government is attempting to humiliate the region in an attack on democracy. It's after Madrid announced it would press ahead with plans to assume control of the region. The Catalan president's appealing to Europe for support and says they'll never accept the plan for direct rule.
We do what we do because we believe in a democratic and peaceful Europe. The Europe of the Charter of Fundamental Rights that should protect each and every one of us. You should know that what you are fighting for at your home, we are also fighting for in Catalonia. And we will continue to do so.
Britain is to spend £10 million to help rebuild Raqqa in Syria after it was taken from Islamic State. The aid package will be used to clear landmines and restock hospitals so displaced Syrians can return home. It'll also fund relief kits, including cooking equipment, blankets and water purifying tablets. A letter written on board the Titanic the day before it sank has sold for a world record price at auction. The note by passenger Alexander Holverson was intended for his mother and fetched £126,000. In the seawater-stained document, he described the boat as a palatial hotel with excellent food and music. Now, one of the world's best sailors has revealed her pursuit of a gold medal at the Rio Olympics was hampered by the amount of plastic in the water. Now, Annalise Murphy is a crew member on a vessel which has teamed up with Sky Ocean Rescue for the Volvo Ocean Race, which starts today in Spain. Sky's Enda Brady has this report.
The Volvo Ocean Race covers 45,000 nautical miles and takes in 11 countries. Enda Brady, Sky News in Alicante.
And we'll have a special programme on efforts to clean up the oceans this afternoon. That's a plastic voyage. You can see that at 2 o'clock. Now, the 5 living former US presidents have gathered for a concert to raise money for victims affected by the recent hurricanes. Barack Obama, George W. Bush, Bill Clinton, George H.W. Bush and Jimmy Carter attended the ceremony in Texas. Donald Trump wasn't there, but he did send a video message, and Lady Gaga was among the performers. Now, after the Grenfell Tower fire, local councils around the country embarked on safety checks to see if their buildings pose similar risks. As a result, Slough Borough Council has been paying £2,000 a day for firefighters to monitor one privately owned block in Berkshire, deemed to be unsafe. Sky's Siobhan Robbins has more.
Day and night, a fire crew watches these flats, costing thousands of pounds to hire. Living in this block think the risk is too high and want to be rehoused until the danger has passed. Siobhan Robbins, Sky News, Slough.
You're watching Sky News. Coming up, after the fall of Raqqa, we discuss the future for Islamic State's extremists. This is Sky News. Let's find out now what's coming up in the sport.
Yeah, hi there. Coming up in the sport at 1:15, the pressure is on Ronald Koeman in the Premier League. Everton are at home to Arsenal in the lunchtime kickoff, and a heavy defeat could see his side slip into the relegation places. I'll be back with all that and plenty more at 1:15.
Thanks, Hayley. Now, over the past few days, Sky News has reported from Islamic State's former de facto capital of Raqqa. In just a moment, we'll be speaking with John McHugo, the author of the book Syria, A Recent History. But first of all, here's what Sky's chief correspondent Stuart Ramsey, cameraman Adam Cole and security advisor Mike McQuinney witnessed when they entered the terror organisation's former stronghold.
This is hugely significant, what has happened here. And this roundabout is where bodies would be left after being executed.
Well, joining me now is John McHugo, the author of the book Syria, A Recent History. Shocking scenes in that clip that we've seen there. How significant is it that Kurdish forces have now taken Raqqa?
Well, I noticed you described them as Kurdish forces. They're Kurdish-dominated forces, but they do contain Arab elements and also Syriac Christian elements. It's in terms of the decay, I think that's the right way to describe it, the decay of so-called self-styled Islamic State. I think it's very significant in terms of reducing their footprint in Syria. But we've got to also be thinking about, if you like, the bigger picture, because for most Syrians, is so-called self-styled Islamic State is not the big problem. It's what's going to happen to their country. And many of them would tell you, if you had them here today, that actually the vast majority of people who've been killed or maimed in this ghastly conflict have been killed or maimed by the Syrian government forces or forces allied to it, such as the Russian bombing. And so we have to see what's going to happen now.
So what does this mean? I mean, this was their de facto capital, wasn't it? Will we see them have less of an influence? Will we see fewer terror attacks around the world?
Well, if we're talking about the global situation, we all know that they exist online. They're a virtual organisation, as well as having their own bit of territory that they had grabbed. But I think the online and virtual presence will continue. To a large extent, it's a spin operation. I mean, you may have noticed that very often when a terror attack takes place, ISIS immediately claim it, even if it turns out to have been committed subsequently by a white supremacist or someone in the state. You cannot trust a word they say, obviously. And so I think they're going to remain on in the virtual universe and in the universe of spin for a long, long while. Remember that IS are a symptom, not a cause of what's gone wrong.
Their power and their strength has to be lessening. I mean, they had such swathes of land just a couple of years ago.
Absolutely. And also, let's remember that from the point of view of people who are in danger of being radicalised, they must be looking a less attractive outfit by the day, because there was this false, dangerous dream of reconstructing a modern caliphate. And that, must be, quite frankly, in tatters now.
And of course, it took a long time for the fall of Mosul as well, and Raqqa too. Sometimes they come out and they say that, they have taken those cities, but obviously we've seen it takes many, many months.
Well, it's all very confusing. And remember also that it's an organisation that only was ever able to grow in a vacuum. But once they had their vacuum and they got themselves entrenched in Raqqa and Mosul and many other places, they were able to defend the areas. They've got they had some good people militarily, defectors from Saddam Hussein's army, some of whom adopted their ideology and who feel they've been pushed out by the new institutions of the Iraqi state that's been set up since the invasion in 2003. Yes, I mean, they've been quite a formidable opponent because they've been in a vacuum, and frankly, the forces fighting against them have generally had one arm tied behind their backs.
And how about for people who once called Raqqa home? Because that is going to take many, many years to rebuild now, isn't it?
Well, I know. I mean, it seems to be a completely deserted city. One rather sad reflection is that in so many places which have been liberated from IS, you found all these civilians who've been terrorised and are starving and dying of thirst. Raqqa appears to be a completely ghost town. I'd like to know where all the people are. I suspect they've somehow become refugees, internally displaced. Perhaps as IS's grip weakened, they were more able to escape instead of being used as human shields. But let's wait to see what comes out in the coming weeks and months.
Indeed. John McHugh, thanks ever so much for your expertise. Time now to take a look at the weather.
Ensuring brighter days ahead. Blue Insurance Car Insurance. Proud sponsors of Sky News Weather.
Well, the weather will improve today as Storm Brian moves away, taking the strong winds and blustery showers with it and leaving brighter skies behind, I'm pleased to say. By lunchtime, the winds have eased and any lingering showers will tend to be focused towards the north and the west. During the rest of the afternoon, most places will become drier and brighter. However, cloud will thicken from the far west with outbreaks of rain reaching western fringes of Ireland. Cloud and rain will spread across Ireland into Northern Ireland and much of Britain overnight.
Blue Insurance Car Insurance. Proud sponsors of Sky News Weather.
You're watching Sky News. Coming up, the changing nature of Sundays, how the seventh day of the week might not be just a day of rest. Welcome back. You're watching Sky News. Here are today's top stories. Sky News learns 5 major business groups have teamed up to warn the government of the risk to jobs posed by Brexit. Gazumping could be banned as part of government plans to make buying and selling a home cheaper, faster and less stressful. Motorists entering the capital will have to pay an additional £10 on weekdays from tomorrow in a bid to cut congestion and air pollution. Now, for hundreds of years, people have regarded Sundays as a day of rest, going to church, a walk or enjoying a roast with the family. But now it seems many of us don't see today as being any different to other days of the week. Photographer Matt Rittell has spent much of the past decade capturing how people now spend their Sundays. And I'm pleased to say he joins us now from central London. Very good afternoon, Sunday, should I say to you. Why do you think things have changed so much?
Well, I think you can't help but not link the sort of decline in Anglican and Christian church attendance with that of the rise of consumerism and the internet. I mean, when the Sunday Trading Law was passed in 1994, making shopping a lot more of a Sunday event, I think that that has obviously had a detrimental impact on that.
And we're going to look at some of your pictures that you have taken now. What were the things that you found had changed the most? What did people do on a Sunday now?
Again, I think it's more to do with more people are out and about going shopping, really. I mean, there are still those traditional things that people do. Sports activities, spending time with their families and things. But I think what happens is now that people are factoring in more of the things that they would have done on a Saturday into their behaviour on a Sunday. And my book is more about not necessarily saying that's a detrimental thing, but at the same time, I think what it is saying is we should all just pause for a minute and just think at the pace that we're living our lives right now, is that a good thing for us, for our human condition and our well-being?
We're looking at some of your pictures now. People on a train, drinking a beer. We've got people playing cricket, that kind of thing. I have to say, does it depend on where you live in the country? I used to live in Jersey in the Channel Islands, and there, Sunday is very much still a day of rest, I'd say. The shops are shut, that kind of thing. So is it a geographical thing?
Yeah, I think there is a massive element of that. I think London is, like most people would agree, I think is a different country, really, to the rest of England. I mean, the book is about England, and, you know, I'm originally from the West Midlands, and last Sunday I was visiting my parents, and my wife and I were walking with our son, and most people were fairly quiet in a suburban environment and people were washing their cars. So there is an element of that. But what I'm saying is I'm questioning whether or not the speed in which we're living our lives now is starting to creep into that. And what I'm trying to sort of look at is is that a positive thing? Do we as human beings need that day of rest just to relax and switch off and contemplate? So yeah, that's kind of what the book is trying to get people to do, to think about how much value they place on their leisure time.
And I was going to ask you that actually. What are your personal views? Do you think it's a shame that we've changed to a more modern way of thinking? People do a lot, don't they, on a Sunday now, rather than the traditional church and catching up with friends, having a roast, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think everything in moderation is the answer. I personally don't think it's a bad thing that you have the option to go and buy the things that you can't do. We live in a very busy life now, and people simply can't get to the shops to do the things that they want to do during the rest of the week. So it is important for certain people to have that. But what I'm trying to question is, you know, let's think about is this going to be detrimental to us or not?
So what are you doing for the rest of your Sunday then?
Well, after I've finished this interview, I'll be going home to my wife and my son and hopefully having a nice lunch and then going for a walk in the countryside.
Did you find from taking your pictures and a bit of your research there was less time spent with families and the kids?
Not on all of the books. I mean, I photographed about 30 different people and only 12 have made the book. I don't know, I think certain families, the story I did on the farmers, which is a Muslim family who got out of the rat race and they moved to Oxfordshire and started their own organic halal chicken farm. I mean, in the morning, the wife gets up and she takes the produce to the farmer's market and she works the farmer's market until 1 o'clock. And on the way to the farmer's market, she goes to Waitrose to drop off the eggs and then to drop off some chickens. And then the husband is left at home sort of schooling the children and taking care of the children. So, yeah, it has an impact on them as well. That was one example.
And what would you say was your favourite picture of all the ones that were taken?
Oh, wow. There's so many. I really like the story about the pastor, and I really like there's a picture of him just looking up to the sky as he was psyching himself up to begin his first sermon of the day. And the reason I included that, as opposed to not including the 4 Anglican priests I followed, was because with Anglican attendance, that's on the decline, whereas Pentecostal attendance is increased by 38% in the last since 1980. So it's quite a popular thing in that community.
Thank you very much and enjoy your Sunday.
You too. Thanks.
Now, Catalonia's leader has accused the Spanish government of the worst attack on his region since Spanish dictator Francisco Franco. It follows Madrid's decision to press ahead with plans to assume control of the region. The Catalan leader has appealed to Europe for support and drawn comparisons with UK voters' decision to leave the EU.
It would be very easy, wouldn't it, to assume that the vast majority of people in Catalonia, because of the images we've seen, are in support of independence. Well, that simply isn't true, that he's going to declare independence. A lot of people, particularly anti-independence supporters, are very worried about what's going to happen if he does that.
This is Sky News. Coming up in the sport, we hear from birthday boy Arsene Wenger about his plans for the future.
Aldi, official supermarket of the IRFU.
Welcome back. Let's take a look at the sport now.
This sports bulletin is brought to you by Vitality.
Buongiorno. Buongiorno.
For life insurance that rewards healthy living.
Everton manager Ronald Koeman admits he will pay the price if he doesn't turn his side's fortunes around soon. He's under pressure heading into today's Premier League match against Arsenal. Well, there's plenty more live on Sky Sports News right now. We're back in the next hour to keep you updated with all that's happening in the Super Sunday games and more besides.
For life insurance that rewards healthy living, Vitality.
Well, time now to take a look at the weather.
From the clear blue sky of a Doha morning to the fresh autumn breeze in the city of love.
Well, the weather will improve today as Storm Brian moves away, taking with it the strong winds and blustery showers and leaving brighter skies behind. By lunchtime, the winds will have eased and any lingering showers will tend to be focused towards the north and the west. During the rest of the afternoon, most places will become drier and brighter. However, cloud will thicken from the far west with outbreaks of rain reaching western fringes of Ireland. Cloud and rain will spread across Ireland into Northern Ireland and much of Britain overnight, followed by clear spells for Western Ireland. The far east of Britain will be mostly dry and chilly. For many, it'll be a cloudy start to Monday with outbreaks of rain clearing eastwards. Drier, sunnier and milder weather will spread in from the west later on.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
You're watching Sky News. Coming up, switching party allegiance over Brexit. We'll have the very latest on how the government faces a fight from both the opposition and its own MPs. More on that coming up after this very short break.